everyone, it's Amy here. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing really well. So today we're going to be doing a mid-month wrap-up, which I've never done on my channel before because I never usually read, I suppose, enough books to maybe do one of these videos, but because I had a week of annual leave at the beginning of May, I've already read a number of books. I think as of today, I think I've read 14 books already, and it's like the 15th of the month. So we're going to be doing the wrap up of all the physical books I've read so far this month, and then come the end of the month, you'll see all the other books that I've read, as well as any other physical books that I read between now and then. So as per usual, we will go from my lowest star rating up to my highest, and I have 10 books to talk to you about today. So let's jump in. So the first book I'm going to talk about is actually one that I decided not to rate on Goodreads or anywhere like that because I just didn't know how to rate it, and I feel like potentially this book is like not one that I understood fully, so couldn't really give my full opinion on it. And that is a book of poetry called The Historians by Ivan Boland. This, I've said it before, I'm not the biggest reader of poetry, and I feel like this is the kind of poetry that just doesn't gel with me. I found that my mind was drifting a lot when I was reading these because I wasn't connecting to what was happening. It was very jumpy and I just didn't fully understand it. Do you guys rate every single book that you read? Historically, that is what I've done, but this one I just didn't feel like it was right for me to rate it because it wasn't for me. I don't know, it's a bit of a weird one. Moving swiftly on to the only 2-star book that I've rated so far this month, and that goes to The Book of Dust, The Secret Commonwealth. So this is the second book in Philip Pullman's new trilogy that is in the world of His Dark Materials. Now, if you've been on my channel for a very long time, you will know that His Dark Materials is one of my all-time favourite fantasy series. It's one of the first fantasy series that I ever read when I was a child, and I've read it and reread it many times, and I love it. And when this series came out, and we were waiting for the series for a very long time, I have just been very disappointed with it. And in all honesty, I think I'm just going to stop reading this series now and forget that it ever existed. So I won't tell you exactly what happens, but in this book, essentially, we follow Lyra, who is the main character from the His Dark Materials trilogy, and it's set about 10 years after that, so I think she's around 20 years old. The issue that I have with this new trilogy from Pullman is I feel like he just doesn't know who his audience is anymore. He wrote his first trilogy, it was aimed at children and young adults, whilst it was read by adults as well. That was the main audience. And I feel like with these books, he is trying to appeal to an adult audience, but it still reads like a children's book. For me, it is just too jarring when I love His Dark Materials so much to read a book where like the characters are swearing, there's things like rape, there's a lot of stuff that just wasn't touched on in the first trilogy. It's just my personal preference, I think, on it, because I imagine a lot of people would really like that, to see the characters that they love move into a more adult setting. But for me, it felt really unnecessary. Like, I read books with swearing in. I'm not saying that you should never swear in a book. To me, it just didn't feel natural. It felt like Philip Pullman was doing it purposefully because he felt like, oh, I'm writing a book for adults now, or I'm writing a book that I want to appeal to adults, so I obviously have to put swearing in because that's how you appeal to an older audience. There's a rape scene in this book, and it just felt so incredibly bizarre to me, and like such a completely different vibe to that first trilogy, that it honestly feels like it's written by a different author. I didn't like the plot of this book. I didn't like the relationships that Lyra had. I didn't like the way that Pullman wrote about women and the male gaze, and it just seemed like every single man that Lyra encountered was like judging her on whether he wanted to have sex with her, and she was having all these thoughts about whether she was going to have sex with him, and it was just like it felt so weird. It's also a very long book, and one that I feel very much is a kind of buffer between first and third, because barely anything even happened in this story of consequence. Like, nothing that actually felt like we were gaining something in the story. Lyra was doing all these random things that seemed to make no sense to me whatsoever. So I imagine, I would hope that all of those things were actually leading to something happening in that third book, but I have absolutely no interest in continuing reading this terrible series. Moving on to the 3-star books, the first book I have here is And the Mountains Echoed by Khaled Hosseini. The premise of this one sounded incredible. The writing in this book was beautiful. I am very keen to pick up another book by this author. However, the way the story actually transpired, I didn't overly enjoy. I believed this book was going to be about a brother and sister. It was. However, we don't stay with that brother and sister for the entire novel. We are with them at the very beginning, and then we branch out and we go down all these different routes of kind of people who are kind of related and different storylines that eventually all kind of come back round to this brother and sister. But each new chapter, the chapters are quite long as well, each new chapter you meet a new character, and honestly, I was spending the first like 10-15 pages wondering where, like, who on earth this character was and how they were related to the original 2 characters. For me personally, I don't think I'm a lover of that type of storytelling. I much prefer staying with a select group of characters that then I get to know and love and move on with. But with this one, I just got to the point where I wasn't caring about the new characters that were coming along in each chapter, and I was just waiting to try and find out what was actually happening with the first 2 characters. So yes, it was a bit of a meh book from me, but I do look forward to reading more from this author in the future. Moving on to the 4-star books, the first one I have here is The Nine-Chambered Heart by Janice Parriat. So this was a really interesting book, and one that I wasn't sure I was enjoying until I got a little bit further into it. So essentially, we are told the story of this woman, this unnamed woman, who we don't read through the perspective of. Each chapter is told through the perspective of someone who knows this woman, who has had an encounter with her, who's been in a relationship with her, and we perceive her through their eyes. It's a book about love and lost connections, and just that idea of how you are perceived and what you put out into the world and how that is read by other people. Because it's interesting, because she is the main character throughout the book. However, you get a very deep look into the people that are telling their story about her, and you learn so much about them as well. It's a really interesting one and told in a really beautiful and poetic way. I would really recommend it. Next up for the 4 stars, we have My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite. This one I really flew through. I really enjoyed the way it was written. The character was so compelling to me. I thought it was really great. This one is set in Nigeria, and it follows 2 sisters, one of whom we read through the perspective of, and her sister is a serial killer who keeps calling her to say that she's murdered another man and she needs her to come and help clean up the mess. What I really loved about this one was that I kind of assumed that I knew where the book was going, like where it was going to end and what was going to transpire between these 2 sisters, but I wasn't right at all. Like, I got it wrong, and I love that, because quite often I guess things and it disappoints me that I actually get it right. But with this one, the ending wasn't what I expected, and I love that. I've never read a book about a female serial killer before, so it's really interesting to see how the psychological aspects of this person were portrayed, and her sister's reaction to her repeatedly killing people. I found it so interesting, brilliantly told, really enjoyed it, so I would recommend this one. Next up, we have some graphic novels, and I'm gonna do all 3 in one because I actually gave 4 stars to all of this, and it is the first 3 books in the Heartstopper series by Alice Oseman. So I read these ones as part of my Reading Like Sabine from Sabine's Book Nook week. If you haven't seen that video, I'll link it around here. These are graphic novels with very simple black and white drawings in them, and we follow the story of Nick and Charlie. They attend high school together. Charlie is in the year below Nick. Charlie was outed as being gay, and so he's had a bit of bullying, but he decides to join the rugby team, and that is where he meets Nick, and they make friends, and as it goes, obviously they fall in love, and it is just the most sweet book. I would so recommend you go and find them. I do believe you can actually get them online for free, or at least part of them online for free, so I would definitely check them out. out. Alice Oseman does a really good job of just portraying that really lovey-dovey, happy feeling when you are falling in love with someone and you have that kind of crush and butterflies in your stomach kind of thing. She does that really, really well. So I'd highly recommend these if you want something to make you smile or to cheer you up. They absolutely did that for me. The final 4-star read I have to share with you today is Glasstown by Isabel Greenberg. This is another graphic novel. Let me show you inside. So this is kind of the illustration style, quite blocky, black lines, muted on the colours, but this one I would say definitely has more colours in it than her other graphic novels that I've read so far. So this one tells the story of the Bronte sisters. So in the book, Glasstown is a fictional world that the Bronte siblings have created and imagined themselves within, with all the different characters. But interestingly, Greenberg has actually used characters that the Bronte siblings actually created in real life in stories that they imagined when they were children. So there is some kind of factual things in here, little tidbits from things that actually did happen in real life. But I really enjoyed it. I love her illustration style. I love the way she tells her stories as well. I think it's very unique. I also really love her very subtle humour as well. I just think they're great. So if you haven't read anything from Greenberg before, I would definitely recommend you do so. I think my favourite of all the ones that I've read from her has to be The 100 Nights of Hero. I think that story is just her absolute best, so would definitely recommend. And the final book I have to share with you today is a 5-star read, and that is Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. So this is a book that's actually written in verse, so hopefully you can see there that it just looks like a poem almost, and that's what the whole book is like. So it actually turns out to be quite a quick read. So this tells the story of 2 half-sisters, the 2 characters here on the front. One is living in the Dominican Republic and the other in New York, and at the very beginning of the book they are unaware of each other. So they share the same dad, but they don't know that the 2 kind of families from this father even exists. At the beginning of the book, it's not a spoiler for me to say, their father dies in a plane crash, and this then obviously unearths the fact that there are 2 families that he has been part of, and that they each now have new family members that they may or may not want to get in touch with, as well as discussions on new family and the betrayals that they felt from their father, and the mother, how she felt about the betrayal as well. She also discusses things such as race, being a young woman. There's an LGBT character in here as well, and so it was just really well rounded. Like, it feels like a story that really could have happened, and it's just deep diving into these people's lives. It was really beautiful. I would highly recommend this author. I'm hoping to read another book from her very soon, and so I'm thinking if that is a 5-star as well, she may have just become a new favourite author, so that's really, really exciting. Would definitely recommend her. So there we are, those are all the physical books that I've read so far in May. I'm very much looking forward to catching up with you again at the end of the month for my part 2 of my wrap up. What have you been reading so far this month? Come and have a chat with me down below. As always, I will leave links to everything I've mentioned today down below. I hope you're all having a lovely day, and I will speak to you soon. Bye!